Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome to the House of Hughes, the latest entry into the Houselights series here on the Nerd Party Network. This week, we are continuing our series on the directed works of John Hughes in the 1980s with 1987's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I'm Darren Moser and am joined again by my friends Marathon Rental Agent Tristan Riddell and the Polka King of the Midwest, John Mills. Gentlemen, yes. One way or another, we will find our way home discussing this great movie, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. So, again, often when we start here on Houselights, we talk about when was the first time we saw this movie. And John and I are in the club of we watch this every Thanksgiving. Not yes. together, but I mean, if we were close, if we were close geographically,
yeah,
in spirit.
I mean, I would travel to watch it with you, but knowing the nature of this film, I probably wouldn't make it for about 5 days.
You'd be inviting disaster, honestly.
But Tristan, this was the first time you had watched this movie by John Hughes with John Candy and Steve Martin in it. So. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say I could ask you when, but we know the answer.
It was
there.
Yeah, it was 2 nights ago. It was funny because as I was watching it, I kept feeling like I was getting deja vu. I was just like, have I seen this before? I was like, I know this scene. How do I know this scene? And I'm sure it's just from seeing bits and pieces on TV, but also I think the main thing, honestly, no joke, is Family Guy has. Given me so many references to it.
Yeah.
There's so many references.
Thanks, Family Guy. Thank you so much.
Like in Return of the Jedi, like one of the biggest ones for me was in Return of the Jedi. Their spoof of Return of the Jedi,
right?
Was right after like some of the Ewoks die and tragically, like they go to the cockpit of the AT-AT Walker or the AT-ST, and you see a guy sleeping on one side, and then the other guy is fake playing the piano and smoking to the mess around.
Yep.
And another big one was I think another big one was they totally like Peter Griffin.
Yes,
did word for word
his
I like me speech, and it ends with Chris going movie references.
Yeah,
and like the beginning of it was, hey, I just bought some shower curtains from a guy over there, and they're filled with helium, so they're lighter.
Yeah. Well, this is good. So. If anything, you watch this movie in order to understand Family Guy references. So that's,
there you go.
I mean, win-win all around.
That's the main reason why I watch movies.
So John, with your, religious, savant level of watching this film, is this something that you watch by yourself every year, or is it a family gathering? Have you introduced it to your children? Do they have a choice?
It has been introduced to my children. And my wife is a stick in the mud because she says that she doesn't want to watch movies if she's seen them before, which leads to an ongoing joke where she can never remember how movies end. And so she'll say, I don't want to watch that. I've seen it. And I say, then tell me how it ends. And she can't. But then she still refuses. Yeah. But, my kids are too cool for school now. 2 of them are. And so they, this last time I watched it alone, but the very first memory I have of watching this was watching it with my family as we were putting up the Christmas tree. So it would have been on home video. We didn't see this in the movie theater. And it immediately became part of every holiday season. And then growing up, as I encountered other people who had seen it, I mean, I can't tell you how many times my friends and I have been we're driving down the road and somebody rolls down the window and goes, "You're going the wrong way." You were obligated to do the actual scene in your car.
You're going to kill somebody.
And when the warden of Shawshank Prison tells you you're going the wrong way, you should pay attention. Yep. And so it's just been, it's a part of, it's so ingrained. I would say that while I haven't seen this as many times as Star Wars, obviously, I would say that it is as treasured to me as as those films. Like if you look on my Letterboxd profile, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is one of the 4 movies where the poster is there, where you have your obligatory thing. Is this something where you force your children to watch it too? Have they fallen in love with it?
We haven't shown them it yet. I think it's still a little. I mean, the oldest is 10, so she's not quite there yet.
There's some language in here,
but especially a minute of it somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
But no, this was. I mean, I'm sure I saw it, on Blockbuster and whatnot, growing up a little bit, but it wasn't until I got married and my wife and I, who both were kind of into film and studied film in college, where we met. And so this became our tradition, where every Thanksgiving or right around that time, somewhere on that weekend, we would sit down and watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, because it's a Thanksgiving movie. It's one of the few movies that is about that holiday, like so specifically. Like you can't even, there's no shade on Christmas. There's not a Santa in this entire movie. It is getting home for Thanksgiving in '87, and all of that is entailed. And we love it. And it's, it's quotable. I mean, many times I'll say I'll judge a movie by the quotes, especially a comedy movie. And you were just referencing the driving scene where they're going the wrong way. And I'm really interested in us kind of breaking it down, especially having just watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where we get a lot of fourth wall breaks. We were kind of all agreeing. I mean, we all rated that movie as a 5, that it was very much a pinnacle for John Hughes. I mean, that's who we were talking about, right? Let's bring it back to John Hughes. But Tristan, what would you say, looking at that Hughes lens, now that we have quite a few movies under our belt, but this is the first one where it's not we're going to Chicago, but we don't spend almost any time there. We're traveling, and we're traveling with 2 adults. Was that, kind of out of left field, and you're like, is this a John Hughes movie? Would you have felt that this was a John Hughes movie, even, because of the subject matter being so different? How did that come across?
That's a really solid point and question. I did feel it did feel out of left field, where where's
like, Anthony
Mackie? Like this isn't a high school comedy. This isn't where the hijinks ensue because of the interpersonal drama between young people trying to find themselves, or their crappy relationship with their dad. That was interesting to me to see that. I don't know if I could say, this is a John Hughes film, because from what I've seen, and I'm not an expert, but I don't see a visual representation of John Hughes very strongly. Like, yes, like every director has his style, but I feel like John Hughes, his visual style is much more generic as opposed to his writing style.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
in a weekend,
like he's not like Wes Anderson. He's not
right.
He's not even a Michael Mann. Like it's just, it's just kind of like,
they have a visual style more than other.
Yeah, I would offer, I completely agree with that. Visually, it's, you just see the difference that an editor makes with Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like you can see that Hirsch is there. Mm-hmm. And you can definitely see it here in this too. I agree with you visually. I think where Hughes's strength lies is in the performances he can get from his actors, because everybody is a human. It's very easy for a movie for any of the movies he's done up to this point, for any movie like this, just to be stock characters who just go through a story. That's why when I heard about this being remade, that they were going to put it into development to remake it a year or 2 ago, a chill formed in the pit of my stomach, because what makes this movie work, there's nothing especially trailblazing about the story per se. Like it's a comedy of errors. It's
road
all
trip
of these,
movie.
Yeah, road trip movie, all of these sorts of things. What makes it click is Hughes got those performances out of them and made me believe that these people exist. I look at John Candy, and he's an actor I grew up watching, and I love him as an actor. but when I see him, the first thought in my brain is Del Griffith, shower curtain ring division. It's right there. And even Steve Martin he was so perfectly primed for this, because Martin was trying to find that transition from the more, the sillier comedy like The Jerk.
It was zany. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was trying to get into an adult role, but Hughes lets him retain what made him funny to begin with. And so I think that's what really works is, here I am going on and on. I should be, asking the question back, honestly, because you're the new viewer. Do you agree with that? Do you think that that's Hughes's trademark, really, is the fact that he gets this chemistry in his actors?
I think that's it's interesting because whenever I once had a friend of mine who was very skilled in theater would tell me whenever an actor does well, they get a pat on the back, but whenever an actor does poorly, it's the director's fault.
Right.
And I think directors don't get enough credit for getting the performance out of them. And I do think you're right that I do think that Hughes definitely gets great performances, because no matter, even with 16 Candles, even if we didn't, I think it was, the three of us did not like 16 Candles.
Not a whole lot, no.
But the for the most part, like Anthony Michael Hall, Molly Ringwald, even the grandparents and the parents and everything like that. I think the boy she ended up with was pretty much a walking void. But everybody else, even though it wasn't a good story and it was mismatched and they were believable people, even if they were crazy. And I think with Ferris Bueller, even though you have a crazy circumstance where, they'd never be able to do all the things that they did in one day, you believe it because the people are believable. And I think that's one thing that's definitely surprised me about this movie, is that I was very, as soon as we saw Candy on the plane, I was
is this coincidence? Is this luck?
I was like, okay, he's just going to be a caricature. I was like, Candy's just going to be that super annoying insurance salesman that you get seated next to. And at first, that's what you think it's going to be. But then, they chip away at the layers and you realize that he's actually a human being. I think when we get to the hotel room, that's when I'm like, ugh, this is just, Candy is disgusting. But I think post speech, that's when you realize, oh, okay, all right, no, this guy actually has some depth to him. And so I've moved away from your question. But I think the writing and the performances that he gets is definitely Hughes' signature, way more than any kind of viewing style or editing style, visual style or editing style, or even music, really. I mean, John Hughes, I feel like John Hughes existing in the 80s and the music he chose is more recognizable than what John Hughes himself chose. Does that make sense? I feel like the decade kind of defined it more than John Hughes himself. Maybe I'm taking credit away from him when I shouldn't, but
I would argue Hughes had more of a hand in the music. But it's interesting that you mentioned the and this is where I come back to Paul Hirsch, tremendous editor.
Right.
This was another movie where it was somewhere around 3 hours was the first assembly.
Oh, I can imagine it was really long.
Right. And in Hirsch's autobiography, he said they watched it once straight through and practically didn't talk, just got up and went to lunch. And then they were like, okay, let's get to work. And there was originally a lot of stuff in that hotel room scene, a lot of gags that they filmed. I think a shot or two made it into the trailer. And there's even a reference to something that happened about ordering pizza. Because when Steve Martin sees the money missing from his wallet, he says, oh, you went in there for pizza money. And maybe, just maybe, that's a reference to the fact that they got pizza the night before. That's why he thinks Candy
stole the money.
That's an added reason why he thinks Candy took the money. But it's so quick, it's so effortlessly blended that it wasn't until I read Hirsch's autobiography where I go, oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. I got it now. I got it.
And that kind of a cut works because, I mean, oh, you went in to get pizza money. We didn't need to see that specifically. We believe that happened. And no, but that's true because I don't think you would have seen the trailer for this, Tristan. And yeah, I do remember now there were a couple of gags and minor scenes that were in the trailer that were not in the final cut. So that somewhere between, okay, we got to get something out the door to promote this because it's got to drop at Thanksgiving time to really catch that market. Yeah,
Apparently
not too many
Hughes
jokes, but
filmed
a little bit.
Twice as much film as one normally does for a film of this budget and size.
Oh, interesting.
Well, I think they were also chasing the snow because
Yeah.
Kind
Kind of like Home Alone.
Yeah, but he wanted real snow, and so they were chasing the snow to get the weather shots that they needed. So I know that
apparently
was
they were camped out, and actually where I went to school in the Kankakee Bourbonnais area is where I went to college, and they were. I read about this, and they were camped out for like a week at a train station waiting for snow, and they never got it, and so they had to go someplace else.
Isn't that nuts?
But they still filmed the whole movie in like 85 days, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's around the time that's about as much time as Spielberg spent filming Raiders. And he was doing that just to prove a point to Lucas that he could do it. So,
well, let's talk about some of the side characters first, because I mean, we'll come back to Neil Page and Del Griffith they're obviously the powerhouses, but especially having watched a lot of Hughes now in a row, I mean, obviously you have kind of Hughes favorites that come back into play. I think, we have Kevin Bacon for a moment, which is always fun to see in the very beginning. It's
which
kind of
I think is his character
blink as you miss it.
The next film, though.
Right. I think it is.
Well, he was able to film it because they were, like in production or whatever. Or close to production or something like that. So yeah, they brought him over. I don't know if he's supposed to be the same character.
I read that like you can hear him arguing with his wife from the movie in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah,
but that's on the TV.
Yeah,
that's when Neil's
okay.
wife is going to sleep. You hear on the TV set, what if the shoe was on the other foot? Well, then I'd go barefoot, which is from an argument and she's having a baby.
Oh, okay. I got you.
It's like Pixar level Inception, but it all gets there.
Okay.
Well, I love seeing, Edie McClurg come back as the car rental agent. And, oh, man, she just, not only do we get her great performance, but then we get the 1 minute long, you have 1 minute to say the F word as many times as you can and vent like we all wish we could if we were stuck in that location and that situation. But, again, seeing her just a moment ago being, the principal's secretary and right-hand person. And now, she just owns the scene. It's such a funny scene and so memorable.
Yes, it truly is. And I do think that her reactions have a lot to do with it. I think that the best part of the scene is you laugh because Steve Martin, this poor woman didn't do anything.
No.
Steve Martin's just at the end of his rope, right? But then at the end, she wins. And I think that's what makes the whole scene work.
Oh no! What?
But it's beautiful because, and this I think gets to the fact that that Neil isn't just a caricature, in that you see the buildup. Like if you were a bystander and you saw that happen, you'd say,
like, what the heck happened?
What a jerk. What is wrong with you? But then you see everything that leads up to it and you go, oh, okay. That was just the straw that broke the camel's back. That was the end of it. But I remember, I remember on the first viewing, I remember my dad howling during that scene, laughing. He just, and when my dad didn't like really break up laughing very much. He loved to laugh. He was a silly guy. But his absolutely uncontrolled laughter during that scene is a memory that I treasure that's stored in my brain. And I laugh the same way. And again, it's another scene where my brother and I will throw it at each other at Thanksgiving time where, one of us will be on the phone and be like, may I help you? And it's like, there's your cue. Just go for it.
How may I help you?
Yes.
And you're just like, oh, if you had just it's like, it was done to him, but he also did it to himself, like just as much. and you're like, I feel sorry for you, but I don't feel that sorry for you because you've kind of been a jerk this entire movie so far.
Yeah.
And we have Ben Stein, come back for his. Now he's working at an airport, announcing canceled planes, and but yeah, this, it's such a fun. All the little. Would you say, Tristan, that the side characters are more caricature than the main two? Like, do they feel one note? Like, you have the taxi driver, and you have the Bridalwood Inn, hotel owner, and you have the, Owen, the spit shaking, son-in-law or whatever. Like, or do they still feel like, even though we're only getting them for a second, like they're people? They're just people you wouldn't really want to meet on a road trip.
I think the side characters weren't that off the wall except for Owen. Like when Owen popped out, that's when I was just kind of like, okay, we're getting into silly territory here. Like we're getting into absurdist caricature humor. But
or maybe you've met different people than John's met.
Yeah, I'm going to pull the I knew people like that sort of thing. Like, I grew up in the middle of nowhere. That wasn't too far fetched. Like it's exaggerated for comedy, but
I like half of my family's from Kentucky. Like, don't worry. Like I
good.
Yes.
Okay.
Like, no, I understand that like people like this exist, but it's just when you plop them in this kind of story, and then it's just like that right out of the gate. It feels like he felt out of place to me. But everybody else I felt was fine and on brand with the rest of the story. Apparently with the Owen thing, they weren't like, he wasn't getting the reaction. Hughes wasn't getting the reaction that he wanted to out of Steve Martin. And so he told Dylan Baker, the actor, he said, I can't remember if it was Hughes's idea or Dylan Baker's idea, but they needed to do something. And so like he kind of like spat into his hand or like wiped his mouth and then shook Steve Martin's hand, and Steve Martin had no idea that was coming, but just went with it. And as soon as they yelled cut, he went and washed his hands, and everybody just lost it because he was just so disgusted.
Well, yeah.
Oh, it's very disgusting.
That completely works. I mean, what's crazy to me with the side characters, I mean, I love Doobie. I think that a lot of times the side characters act to they give Del his moments to shine.
Yeah, he's a people person.
Right. But Del is the type of guy where he is annoying as all get out, but you see that he treats everybody with just a basic level of respect and love. And it's like, you can't dislike somebody like that. You might not want to be trapped in a car with them, but they're a good person. You can tell they're a good person. But what I'm always fascinated by is Michael McKean playing the state trooper. There's a whole bunch cut out with him too. He's simply, in that moment, but there's a whole thing that they cut out with him. And it's such an interesting sort of thing to me because Michael McKean is enough of a name by this point that he didn't accept the role just for a handful of lines on the side of the road.
Yeah, he got forced billing.
Right. And it's like, but the majority of it is left there. And I got to ask you, Tristan, did you notice John Candy's black eye in this?
I did. I had no idea where it came from.
It's from the cut scene where he gets out of the car and Michael McKean slugs him before they get taken off to the police station. And they pulled it back. But for a year, what I think allows it to work is it's so subtle. Like, it's not like a big shiner. They couldn't have cut it out if it was a big shiner. It looks like just he bonked his face or something like that. It's like, it just happened.
Got roughed up a little bit between one scene and the other.
Or he
just like all the crap that happened with the car,
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you have no functioning gauges. No, not a one.
Not
and
a one.
You have no rear view mirrors. And but the radio still works. Funny enough, clear as a bell. Well, yeah, and we're watching these two characters like just suffer, like just descent into hell of all these terrible things and it's just little things like losing their credit cards, and the bus is full of people, and the train breaks down, and there's no way to get from here to there. And it's like, would you say, John, that this particular story we're given, I mean, we talked a little bit about, like, heaven forbid we reboot this, but story-wise, is it an 80s story, the type of trauma that they're having, or is it has technology? I mean, obviously technology, one cell phone would solve, a lot of problems, but
You can solve for that by having him lose his cell phone, and Dell doesn't have one. I don't believe in the things like you instantly set that up,
or
and
loses his charger and it's like slowly dying for the first act.
or you have he loses his phone, everything's closed because it's the day before Thanksgiving. Like, you can write around those sorts of things.
True.
In terms of the type of travel stuff, like, it's sort of like the movie The Perfect Storm, which the book is the same way, but they're very upfront in the book, at least, where the guy says, this didn't all happen in one trip, but these are all true stories that happened at one time or another. So you can see this movie. This is literally everything that's ever gone wrong on any trip you've ever taken in one trip.
In one movie. Yeah.
And
in one trip.
And that's the thing. That's what stresses you out so bad, is every time you go on a trip like this, you remember the one thing from this trip and the one thing from this trip. And your brain, I'm convinced your lizard brain has a little thing in there saying, well, what if everything happened at the same time? And you're like, oh my God. And I think that's what sends your blood pressure up through the roof.
Oh, definitely. Well, I mean, and even from the very beginning, where he's sitting in this meeting that's like the most pointless meeting ever, and it's like, at the end, there's no decision that's made, and he could have left, an hour earlier, and it wouldn't have made a difference. And
that's the thing. It would, and like Kevin Bacon wouldn't have stolen his cab. Candy wouldn't have stolen his cab, and it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, it would have been fine.
I will say one of the most overlooked perfect moments in this film, though, is his friend leaning in as the elevator closes, going, "You'll never make the 6." And it's, if he had just listened to his friend,
if he just listened and gone out of the gate,
Ferris's dad,
right? Yep. Exactly. Yep. But I'm curious to know, because Darren, you and I are definitely coming at it from a place of love.
True.
And Tristan, I gotta know, did this hit the emotional chords for you? I'm not asking for your rating, but did this strike emotional chords for you in here? Did you feel real empathy for these characters?
No. I think, not to be blunt, but towards the end, actually, no, the very last scene, I started laughing.
Interesting.
Because Steve Martin's wife's reaction was so over the top.
Yeah.
That I half expected her to go, "They told me you were dead." Just the way that she acted. And it ruined it for me. It ruined that, like, we should have seen them carrying, like, I like the image of them carrying the
trunk.
The trunk. Thank you. The trunk, because that was very representative of the movie. Like he tripped over it on the beginning. He sees it at the airport. And then when they divide at the train, he's like, okay, I'll, I'm going to hook back up with Candy, and, I'll pick it up. And it's representative there.
They sit on
friendship.
It when the car's on fire.
I really like that motif that was built from it. And I really liked that final
shot. The music
shot
comes in.
And so they're walking towards his house, which is in Kenilworth, which is not far from me. It's a very ritzy neighborhood. And it should have ended with them walking up to the front door, and then the camera stays outside the house, and then we hear jubilation, and then credits.
Here's where I'm going to disagree with you, and it's not just fueled by my love for the film. Okay, no, seriously, because we keep cutting to the wife through the film, and we know that she is having questions. She doesn't know what's going on. It's like, what's happening, Neil? Like, and she's legitimately, I can put myself in that position of, I haven't heard from my husband in 24 hours. I don't know where he is. I don't know what's going on. Last thing I heard, he was alone out in the middle of nowhere with a strange guy, and it's Thanksgiving Day, but your relatives are over, and you're sitting there trying to keep it together for the sake of the kids, I guess. And it's like her crying makes sense, and her actual emotional, not fragility, but her openness in that moment makes a lot of sense to me. And while I understand what you're saying from a technical standpoint, I cry during that ending. I always have. And not only do I always think of Del Griffith when I see John Candy, but that last shot of Del Griffith
frame
smiling is, I think, the ultimate payoff, because it's Del is happy now. It's not an act. That's a genuine smile from Del. It's not the act that he's been putting on with everybody of the guy that's Mr. Go Lucky. Like, there's real pain inside of him, and you get that moment with him where you see that he's at peace. And that's why I think it makes, it works from my perspective.
Well, it's interesting you talk about cutting back and forth to the wife, and I never even thought of it this way, but it's almost kind of telling that we never cut to Del's wife. I mean, obviously we know why, but I never even thought about the fact of why aren't we also seeing, someone else worrying about Del. Now, I will agree with you, though, Tristan. The scene where she's standing at the top of the stairs and kind of in a hushed whisper goes, "Hi, Mr. Like, the tone doesn't hit for me. I don't particularly like that moment.
I think that's the thing is like John, I get what you're saying, and I believe like the crying is not what bothers me, because like, yeah, this woman is relieved. Like, she's been holding it together. For days, she doesn't know where he is, what's going on. It's a different time, and like, yeah, she's absolutely relieved, and like she's open about him coming home. But there was something about the tone; it just felt too overwrought for me. Like, there was just it's not that she was crying that bothered me. It's just that the tone felt off. But that's just me. And but like the Del stuff, yeah, I did enjoy seeing him. Like, I get that payoff of what you're saying about Del smiling and having a genuine happiness there.
Well, there's also some stuff that's a victim of the cut, where I think that there's enough reference to it, but it's obvious that Steve Martin is constantly away from home, and he's, I mean, I can't even wrap my head around the idea of being home for Thanksgiving being a special thing, or making it home in time for something being a special thing. The kid's
like, flight delay again. Like, so she knows.
There's sort of a sense through the whole thing that she's been putting up with this for years. There's also a subplot that was cut where there was a suspicion of infidelity. And well, but
that makes more sense with some of her lines where she's like, "What's going on, Neil?" Like, that tone.
Yeah.
Is
right.
Are you being straight with me? Which never made sense before, because I didn't
way
know
out
about
of left
that.
field. That felt way out of left field.
But it makes sense, because you have a guy that, I mean, this is very much.
Yeah. Oh, again, I'm stuck in Wichita again. It's like, what? Are you true?
Yeah. But it's also, again, taken from Hughes' own personal experiences of having to commute between Chicago and New York in his ad agency days, and the stress that puts on a relationship. It's got to be insane. Fortunately, when I, was first with my wife, she traveled at least once a month for days at a time. And I can tell you firsthand, that puts a lot of stress on you, because it's, like, you have to disconnect and reconnect, and like the phone isn't the same thing, and, flight delays and stuff like that. So I guess I'm not discounting what you say, Tristan. I really I get the criticism. I do. But I think that it's made up for by the fact that I think that she's a more sympathetic character on a second or third viewing than on a first. But, I mean, I was actually wrong earlier as well. Apparently the first cut, I thought it was around 3 hours. That was Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The first cut of this film, the assembly cut, probably was 3 hours and 45 minutes.
Jeez.
And I cannot imagine, as much as I adore this movie, 3 hours and 45 minutes, I'm walking out halfway through.
This movie is now...
That's an assembly cut.
Yeah,
that's an assembly cut.
Of course.
Well, this movie is 92 minutes, so 14 minutes less than Ferris Bueller. And I think it definitely definitely works better. Obviously, shorter. I want to talk about the cut and the editing as well. One thing you may not know, Tristan, having not seen this movie except for this year, is the kind of one of the emotional climaxes and turning points in the end where Neil Page is riding the subway. That is assembled in the editing room out of the camera being left running. That was not intentionally shot. That was, getting some ADR or whatever, and they're just rolling on Steve Martin, and he's kind of just, where he's glancing at his watch and his watch is gone, and he's kind of just looking around and having this wistful look of remember. And they turn that into this emotional core of him fondly remembering the entire trip and then turning around and going back to Dell. But that was all pulled in from the edit.
Yeah, he was just doing business that they were like, give us something that we'll pick something that you're doing on the train ride if we need to. It's sort of typical sort of thing. But like, and on top of that, which I'm sure you're about to mention, Darren, is in the original version of the ending, Neil just rides home, gets to that train station, and Dell is already there. And Dell has a big long speech and says, when I met somebody like you that I could finally connect with, that's why I didn't want to let go. And then Steve Martin has his realization.
It's overdone. Yeah.
And Hirsch and Hughes realized that's a bridge too far because Dell beat him home, and it makes Dell look less sympathetic. And that's why they took all of that stuff and assembled it and had him go back, because it gives him he's not backed in a corner. He's making the choice to go back to Dell. And I think that's just, I didn't know that until, a couple of years ago. And as I look back on it, I think that is one of the best saves in cinema history right there.
Yeah. That's like end of Star Wars save, like pulling it out basically at the 11th hour.
Yeah.
Because it makes him, and again, I mean, we talk about the first cuts and the rough cuts. I think I also read that they brought back a cut subplot of him, trying to get the credit card back and trying to repay him, because that wasn't in the first cut. And so it made Liddell look even worse. Like he's basically just freeloading this entire time. He didn't have that nugget of charm in his character. But yeah, once we have that, the subway ride where, it's very 80s style, very 80s glow, where he is thinking about home and Thanksgiving and the candles and all of that. And then, it's juxtaposed with, those aren't pillows scene and all these crazy things that he's gone through. And you get, let's talk about the music, because that's where we start to get that kind of percussive, quiet tone. There's Baby's Arms playing, during the pillow scenes. Like, John, what would you say is this another Hughes, knocking out of the park with his choice of music?
You don't even need to finish the question.
Okay, yes. Right up. Well, then Tristan, same question. No,
I can't comment on the music. I really can't. It's not really something I noticed. It's escaping me right now. I feel like a bad movie reviewer, but yeah, I can't comment on it.
I would say the strongest
Red
piece.
River Rock?
Which one? Which part was that? Oh yeah. That's where they're just driving, or when he pulls out in the burn
after wrecking the hotel room.
Yeah. I'd say Baby's Eyes always gets me from the "There's Not Pillows" scene, because it's just it's
Patsy Cline.
It's so hilarious. But okay, so John, you would say that even though we're not breaking the fourth wall in these moments, they are encapsulating kind of the tone of each scene that they're, dabbled into.
Yeah. I mean, I think even though it's not like a hit song or anything, but the song that's playing in Doobie's Taxiola is
that too.
It's fantastic. It's just so funny.
He's so proud of his city. Not a lot of people.
Nothing to see on the interstate but interstate.
Yeah.
You said your friend had never been here before.
And that I think that's just the fact that right there, I said one line from a scene and we're cracking up. Like there's so many great scenes and great quotes and great memorable parts to this entire movie.
My favorite quote that I ended up saying like 3 times before I went to bed was, it's like, I have $2
Yes.
and a Casio.
Yeah.
And then like when he puts it on his arm, like he's showing it, and just the way that he hits Casio, it's just no one could have done that but Candy. Like the way that he did it.
Oh yeah, I think this is John Candy. In a great career, a great comedic career. I still regard this as John Candy's finest hour. I think he just absolutely knocks it out of the park with this, and I think that what I struggle with, right? You always think, well, what actor could this not work? Like if you removed this actor or actress, would the movie fall apart? And I think they could have done anything with, Michael McKean didn't need to be there, whatever.
Yeah.
I think you could have even found somebody other than Steve Martin to make this work. But the heart of this movie is John Candy. Without John Candy, this movie doesn't fly, period. End of sentence. And again, like I said about Ruck with Cameron, it's just another example of the Academy not giving comedy its due.
Yeah.
To look at a role and say, what makes a best actor or best supporting actor? Well, I can't imagine this film without them. There is nobody else I believe could possibly perform the role this well, and John Candy is that. This is his calling card. This is the best thing he ever laid down on film. There.
Now, Tristan, when you were talking about, from the beginning, because you have that unique view that we don't have, where you're watching this story unfold and you're seeing, especially Del Griffith, kind of be this, he's that guy, the one you're sat next to on the plane. And now he's all of a sudden in your hotel room. And now he's, when did he start to kind of shift into the, there's more to this character. I think you already kind of touched on it a little bit, but like there's the main speech. There's later where we kind of get the secondary speech where they're toasting to the wives. How did that journey go for you watching this?
Well, I think I mentioned that it was, you started to understand that there was more to this guy post speech in the hotel room.
The I like me speech.
The I like me speech. And I think how soon after, I feel like after the hotel room, then we went to
the train.
I think the train, like when Steve Martin and like when they had the conversation at the train station, and then I think that's when you started to realize like, oh, like, no, this guy actually is genuinely good. Like he's like, yeah, he has his foibles and he has his ticks, but
right. Yeah, he asked for his address so he can send him the money back, and
you actually did believe him when he said that. It wasn't like a grifter, where it's just like, oh, I just need some gas money. Give me your address. Yeah. I'll send you a check. I'm a Christian. No, it was like, no, like you actually understood it. And so I'd say like right around the train station, and when like Steve Martin opens his eyes on the ground after getting punched at the airport.
What are you doing?
I love so much after Steve Martin is in the car. You see him in pain, dabbing his brow. He's like, do you know how glad I am I didn't kill you? Do you know how glad I'd be if you had?
I've never seen anybody picked up by their testicles before.
It's just so. You're lucky that cop came around. But I even love I think that one of the most magical relationship parts is when they have that moment where Del has that idiot reply in the car that we've all had with a friend, where they just come up with something outlandish that we quote unquote always do. And we're like, what are you talking about? And it's, that whole thing where it's like, oh, give me one example. You play with your balls a lot. And just that look on Steve Martin's face where he's just,
Larry Bird doesn't know
do as much ball handling in one night as you do in an hour.
I always love a good Larry Bird reference.
Yeah,
But just the look of satisfaction on Dell's face of, yeah, I told him. Like
Yeah.
it's such a genuinely
I
human
said
moment.
it. No, I agree with it.
Yeah. I think it's obvious that there's a lot of baggage that Darren and I come in with, but I think that the baggage has been earned through the years because there are for me, precious few comedies where I can still laugh at them after many years.
Every time.
Recently, I just rewatched Zoolander, and I love Zoolander. It's a great guilty pleasure. But the last
what is this, a building for ants?
Right, exactly. But comedy wanes over time. Too many jokes. Like, you need something in the vein of like a History of the World Part 1 or a Blazing Saddles or a Young Frankenstein to really hit that note where you still think it's funny all those years later. And that's probably what I think the magic of this movie is that it still makes me laugh all these years later.
Yeah, and I'd agree. I mean, I've said it before, one of the things I judge a movie as a great movie is how quotable is it. It doesn't even have to be a comedy. Just it could have quotable, One Ping Only is a quotable line, and and Hunt for Red October is not a comedy, but it still has that, that oomph. And I mean, this movie has it in spades. I mean, there's just so many lines. When you get John and I in a room together, we just start, all we're going to do is just quote the movie back and forth to each other.
But here's the question, because Tristan, obviously it didn't strike the same chord with you. So same sort of question that I think we've been going back to with Hughes repeatedly is, why do you think this movie endures? What do you think the magic is that makes it click for people? Why do they hold on to it? Why do they still treasure it? Why are people still writing articles about it? Why are they talking about remaking it? Although I suspect that since it was Will Smith and Kevin Hart tied to the project,
yeah,
given what happened in the Oscars
I don't
2022,
think that's happening anymore.
Well, it's definite Will Smith is playing Neil Page, because I cannot see Del Griffith doing what he did. So, who knows?
Yeah, that was just the day of this recording. It was just released that Will Smith lost at least 2 deals. One with Netflix, one with Sony.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not surprised.
Yikes. But what do you think makes it stick around? What do you think makes it magical for people?
For someone who just saw it, that's a little hard for me to answer.
I was gonna say, that's a I've watched it for 20 years question.
You know what?
Yeah,
no,
I mean,
I like to get down to the core of it.
From a perspective of someone who just saw it 2 days ago, honestly, I feel like you're not going to like this answer, but I think it's nostalgia. I think it's purely nostalgia. I think it's people who were raised on this movie. I feel like there's a lot of movies out there. There's definitely, and we've talked about this before. We've talked about how nostalgia fuels your memory of how good a film is or how good a film wasn't. And this is one of those movies that you see quoted all the time and referenced all the time. And watching it, I'm just like, this would have been better if I had that base. Like if I was raised on it, if my dad liked it, if my mom liked it. Because I've seen a lot of Steve Martin movies. I've seen a lot of John Candy movies, but for some reason I just didn't see this one. And I think it is the time that this movie came out. It was a road film that you could watch on TV, and it was watched a lot. And I'm not saying it's a bad film, because I don't think it's a bad film. But I think it has endured because of its history, not just because of its merits. But that's just me.
Now, see, I think that's interesting, because that's a whole lot of words to say that your heart is dead, as Ali Sheedy predicted in The Breakfast Club. So, wow.
No,
okay.
I mean, I think you're right. Well, like you said, we've talked about nostalgia.
It's just, you got a spouse.
Well, we've talked about nostalgia, and I think we've exemplified that in this podcast, not this specific episode, but in general. Like, we're re-looking at our fan favorites or directors that we love, and we're like, oh yeah, that first film they did, that was not good. That they were not ready yet, or in Hughes' case, even, we were like, oh, this would have been the first one, and why was this done, this way? yeah, there's definitely a nostalgia lenses for sure with this film, especially, I mean, for John and I, if that's not extremely clear.
Yeah, but there's sort of a chicken and egg scenario in that, because the nostalgia, I think, grows out of the love for it a lot of times, right? Like it's one of those things where it's like, does nostalgia blind you to things, or does the nostalgia build because of your genuine love for it? And so it becomes like sort of like a self-defeating argument sort of thing. And that's not to dismiss the fact that I might watch and judge, for instance, Transformers the movie a little less harshly than maybe I should for a toy commercial that was refreshing the line. But it's true art anyway. But like, it's one of those things where sure, you can make the nostalgia argument, even like, especially with like a James Bond movie or something like that. And it's like, you saw it when you were a kid sort of thing. But, the love for something creates the nostalgia for it, because every time you watch it after that, you have that baseline of, yes, remembering that, it's like remembering, the first girl you kissed or something like that, where it's like, maybe that kiss was not as artful as, 13-year-old you thought it was, but you'll always treasure it, sort of thing. There's that aspect to it, but
I would say there's also audience. I mean, I'm not saying you would have gotten a completely different experience, Tristan, but if John and I had been sitting on the couch with you while you watched this for the first time, I think, especially with comedy, especially with humor, it's just like why we still love seeing movies in the theater. Like, that shared experience adds a lot. That is kind of an intrinsic quality you cannot replicate.
Absolutely. I mean, like, there's some of my favorite movies have happened that way, where I see it and then I'm like, it wasn't that good. But then I watch it with my wife and she's just so into it and she's so jazzed that it kind of excites me. And then I start to see it from a different perspective. And yeah, absolutely. Like, that also helps, because like, if I saw it with the two of you, I mean, that's a memory of itself, right. And like, that would have been like, hey, you remember that time when we watched Planes, Trains, and Automobiles? It wouldn't be so much the movie; it would be like, we had a great time. But I
remember
you are 100%
Darren,
right.
You didn't actually let the movie play. You and John quoted it verbatim, and I just
you put it on mute.
You put it on mute with subtitles. It was really odd.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to be prophetic, but that's probably what would have happened.
No, I mean, the comedy, I think, especially, is extremely important to watch with an audience. Like, even more than drama, because it's something where it's supposed to be that communal laughter.
It's the laugh track. It's the laugh track principle. I mean, that's why they have laugh tracks in shows, because if you watch it in silence, it kind of is not as funny, but that extra bit of laughter kind of helps tip the scale in your mind, I guess.
And the only time it never, ever worked under any circumstance was Friends. So you're right. Laugh tracks help generally.
You have such a hate boner for Friends. It's crazy.
You know what? I feel like when I go back on social media that my name next to my user handle on Twitter will change from Die Hard 2 doesn't exist to hate boner. So thank you for that.
Wow. All right. Well, let's.
And what a note to end on.
We're just about home. We're carrying this trunk this long way. I'm going to go first with my rating for Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, 1987. I got to give it a 5. I mean, I know you're shocked by that announcement, but I mean, again, we talked a lot last week about, perfect versus great and all of that, but I love this movie. It's so rewatchable. I would watch it more, except for kind of the mantra of watching it with my wife at Thanksgiving. Like, we purposely don't watch it other times of the year because it makes it even the more special when we watch it once a year at that time of year. And you know what? It never fails to deliver. We're always laughing, maybe not the exact same times as the previous year, but it's so quotable. It's so funny. And like you guys said at the beginning, Hughes pulls an amazing performance out of these people. And especially for the first, non-high school film that he does, that he wrote. I mean, obviously it makes sense that it's based off of, or loosely based off of, an experience he had. You feel that kind of visceral part of the story, but I think it works. I mean, we can see why it's beloved by many, and always a good laugh. And I mean, I haven't seen all of Candy's extended works, but I would probably agree with you, John, that it probably is his best piece because he's given the most to do. I mean, I think of other places where he has roles, and even Uncle Buck or other things where it's the main character. He's given so much to bounce off with Steve Martin that it really, really works. So as we dip in this roller coaster, let's head to Tristan. What did you feel? What would you rate this? And again, we're not trying to bookend you with fives as we probably are, but no, it was really fun though, talking and hearing someone who had just seen it, because that is definitely an experience that John and I are far from. So that was enjoyable.
I think there was a lot of great one-liners. There were some times when I laughed, and that was it was a genuine laugh because of just the pure joy that John Candy exudes. I mean, it's just, he was taken from us. He was robbed.
Yeah.
Like, we were robbed when John Candy left us. And this is definitely one of those performances that is really great. And I completely agree with you, John, about how everybody else in this movie could be replaced. Even Steve Martin could absolutely be replaced, but not John Candy as Del. I think some of the problems that I had were how repetitive it was and how predictable it was. That I know that's part of its charm, where things are going to go awry, but there were so many times when I would just kind of lean over to my wife and I'd be like, "Oh, they're getting on the train. I don't think they're gonna make it." And that
we're only
itself,
30 minutes into this film, so obviously they can't make it on the train.
Yeah, and that in itself can be fun, but there was just something about the repetitive nature of it, and it just I didn't laugh as hard as I wanted to. I didn't find it as charming as I wanted to, because I went into it with very low expectations. I did, I promise.
Which is amazing because of how much John and I probably hyped it up. Yeah.
I think that's actually why I went into it with such low expectations. Like, I forced myself. I'm like, okay, man, just have an enjoyable experience and you will enjoy yourself. Like, don't think it's going to be the greatest thing ever, because it's not going to. There's no way it can live up to that hype. But there was just, like, there was a point when I didn't really care if Steve Martin made it back to his family. and I knew right away that John Candy's wife was dead, and then at the end, like, when I'm laughing at Steve Martin's wife, and her tears, I'm just kind of like, ooh, this movie missed the mark with me. And so I say all of that to say, like, I'd probably give it a 2.5.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm obviously going to give it a 5, since it's, like I said, on my Letterboxd profile, it's one of those 4 movie posters that's up there. And I'll leave you with this thought from the late great Roger Ebert, where in his review that's up there on RogerEbert.com, some movies are obviously great. Others gradually thrust their greatness upon us. When Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was released in 1987, I enjoyed it immensely, gave it a favorable review, and moved on. But the movie continued to live in my memory. Like certain other popular entertainments, it not only contained a universal theme, but also matched it with the right actors and story, so that it shrugged off the other movies of its kind and stood above them in a kind of perfection. So I leave you with those thoughts from the late, great Roger Ebert, who loved this movie far more than Tristan Riddell did.
I love that you had that ready. Like, you knew what was coming.
You knew.
This is one of those movies that I could see watching again, and I could see loving it more. Or,
if we ever all get together in the same place, we're going to have John and I will bring our copies of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And no, I think that would be really fun, actually, watching it all together. Just not to change any minds or to whatever, just enjoy it and have fun together, because I think that would be a great time.
No, I could see this growing on me.
We could watch it in a motorhome on a road trip. That's not good. Let's not do that. All right. Well, John, where would somebody find you if they wanted to look at all 3 of your reviews, all 5 stars of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles?
Just go on over, do a Google search for Castle Junkie. That's me. And you can find me over on the nerdparty.com / what is it? Hosts? Is that where we are? Hosts?
Yes.
Yeah. That's you.
With the most.
There you go. It's a silly picture of me in a Batman cowl. So look for Castle Junkie. That's where I am.
And Tristan, if someone wanted to find out about where you would travel for Thanksgiving, where would they go find you?
You can find me at the Insane Rabbit on Twitter as well as Letterboxd, and you can find me all over this network by going to thenerdparty.com and checking, clicking hosts, finding me, and then you can see all the shows that I've done, and I'm proud of every single one. Darren, what about you?
I think go to drsci-fi.com, DRISFI. Ooh, lost it there. Then go to drsci-fi.com, DRSCIFI, and I might as well throw in. They'll also go to the Nerd Party /hosts, and they'll see my many podcasts that I am a part of, including here on Houselights with my 2 friends. Well, hope your road trips are good. You finally make it to your destinations. And next week, not us specifically, but she is going to be having a baby here on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.